tried out a really inexpensive version of some alcohol markers, and I kind of messed up because I don't have a lot of choices. I got them at Daiso. For those of you who are in the San Diego area, Daiso is a little kind of an Asian market that has a lot of miscellaneous stuff for really cheap. Everything's $1.50 if it's not priced. And these were, you got 2 markers for $1.50. So that's 75 cents a pop, which is for alcohol markers is really cheap. But they had a limited selection of colors. And they did not have good skin tones. And I tried to make some blush, and they don't blend. You know, this paper I'm sure doesn't help either, but they don't blend quite like Copics do. So I wasn't able to reverse that. So it is what it is. But that's how you learn, and that's how you just explore. So so she has really, really rosy cheeks, but otherwise, I was able to get some okay results with these really inexpensive alcohol markers, other than that, the mishap with the face. And I should have really practiced on a page. That brings me to a suggestion. Usually there's some extra pages in your coloring books that don't have anything. Maybe it has credits on it, or maybe just a blank page at the front or the back. This one does not have any, but I could still just pick a page that I don't think I'm going to color and use it as a sample page. And then you can try out a color before you commit. And that would have been a good time to do that with this color. So, so I do recommend to, like I said, pick a page. If there's not a blank one, just pick one that you don't like, or maybe you made a mistake on it and you can use the back. But you'll notice with alcohol markers, they bleed through really bad. So if you're using any kind of wet medium, I always put some kind of cardstock or something in between the pages to protect the following page, or else you're gonna ruin your next page. Especially with alcohol markers, but I even do that with water-based markers, because you can see that's come through as well. So anything wet, I always use a piece of cardstock in between. So that's what I did with those fairly inexpensive alcohol markers. And then I did one that was with the Copic markers, and I got a lot better effect with that. It's still, when you're working with alcohol, you have to work quickly and you have to do small areas, but then, sometimes that can mean that you get brush strokes and things like that. So it is a learning curve working with alcohol markers, and it does depend on the paper that you're using, but I still feel like I was able to do okay with it. Now, here's my color swatches, and this is a good example. And because with the alcohol markers, typically what they're great for is blending. So you typically want to have like a triad of colors, so you can do light, medium, and dark of one shade. So for example, this light green, this is actually 3 markers that I use to create this gradient. Now you can see how these really cheap, these are called Fluently, that I got at the Daiso. You can see the difference in their blending. I had a really hard time getting them to blend. Now, maybe they don't like this paper. Maybe on a different paper they would do better. This paper is not necessarily alcohol marker paper, but it tends to do pretty good. Like these are my Copic markers down here, not these. These ones are my Copic markers, and you can see that they blend pretty nice on this paper. So just because something doesn't blend for you doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. It may just be that the type of paper isn't the right paper for it. The marker paper is usually really fine, really smooth, tightly woven, maybe like a vellum is typically what's designed for these types of markers. So be aware of that. Printer paper is not usually a great option because it's not really that smooth, even though it feels smooth and you touch, you don't feel any texture, but compared to a smooth paper, it's just that the fibers aren't as woven as tightly. But for card making and stuff like this, this paper that I use works pretty well with the Copics. And so that's what I use. I also try to do some blending with some of the Bic markers, which is kind of similar to Sharpie. So basically the Bic markets. And, you know, I got a little bit of blending, but, you know, not seamless by any, you know, stretch of the imagination, but you can play around with using them. I'm still getting a gradient. I can still create this gradient. I just have to, you know, it may not just be as seamless as it would be with a Copic marker, for example. Now, Copics are not inexpensive, but the one thing that's great about Copics is that they do offer, you can purchase refill, or you can refill them. So you can get refill ink, and not all of them have that option. So that is a nice option for the Copic markers. Now, this is how I have mine organized. And I put a little swatch of my triad. Like I said, I have all of them. I try to buy them in a triad of a light, medium, and dark color in the same color family. And what I mean by that is this, for example, is, well, this is orange, which is usually always a warm, but sometimes, like for example, the reds can have a more blue hue. So if it's got more blue in it, it looks more pink. So this is more pink, more blue red, and this one's more of an orange or a yellow type red. So warmer family and a cooler family. You don't want to mix, you don't want to have the lightest color be, you know, pink, and then the medium color be orange red. So you want to have your families together. So what I do is I put them together. I do a little swatch of them blended together. So I can see which ones belong together in case I use them for some other project. Maybe I only use one color, but I know which ones I like to go together. And I just tuck it into my actual storage so I can tell which, you know, not only where I store them, but how I typically like to use them. And I can also see an example of what the color looks like. So that's what I do for the Copics. I'm going to pick up some of my green color. Now you can just use 2 or 3, depends on how big your project is. You can still just blend with 2 colors. It's just the 3 gives you the full range from light, medium to dark. So, but it's up to you, you know, what you want to do. So as promised, remember I had done the little, I redid this one when I did the neurographic inspired art. And so I just created this drawing, and I colored this. I colored the first one with the Copic markers. Now, the blending on this paper isn't great, but I still was able to get, you know, I still was able to make it work. But you'll see that compared to the other paper, I get a lot more of the lines visible. That's okay. It gives us some texture and it's interesting, but it's just not as smooth as the other paper. And that, like I said, is just based on the paper I'm using. This is a mixed, I think this is some kind of mixed medium paper, but it's just not quite as smooth as my cardstock that I have that works really well with the Copics. So, but it's the same technique. And obviously, it takes time, as you can see from just my demo. So I won't be able to, I don't know that I'll be able to finish the whole thing in the time that we have. And yeah, so I'm just going to start on it and see where we get. And then if you guys get bored with it and you want me to work on the face with some colored pencils, then let me know. I'll work on this for a while, and then maybe I'll work on that for a while. So I can kind of demonstrate both on a bigger scale. Okay, so I have the 3. I'm just going to start with my little egg. This is, I think of this as a little nest, and these are little eggs. So that's kind of how I think of them. And so I think I'm going to start with working on, actually, I think I want to start working on, I think I'm going to work on the background first, the purple. I was going to work on them, but I I want to have a guide to know where I want my purple. See how I have, sometimes I have these little strips of purple around the eggs. And I don't want to make the mistake of coloring them in green. So I want to really be clear about what color is what. And that's one thing to do, is really plan out your coloring for that reason. It's like, okay, what's the easiest way to, help me not make a mistake. And I think this route is a little bit easier. So I have my 3 colors, and I'm just going to start doing my thing. I think about this side as being the shadow side. So I'm going to have the dominant darker colors over here. And I think I actually used, in the first one, I used all of my both of my sets of warm and cool purples, because I just wanted to mix it up. So as I showed before, I think about, I want to look at my little swatches, make sure that I'm knowing which one is the light, medium, and dark. Sometimes it's tricky to tell. So the V12, which is violet 12, violet 15, and violet 17. Oftentimes for the Copics, it goes in order, but not always. So, and you can see one's a more warm color and one's a more purple color. So I'm going to use this as maybe the shadow of this color. This is going to be the main color. And I'm just going to start. Now, in this case, with this paper, I'm going to play around with my order of operations. But I think one of the challenges is with this paper is that it dries real quickly. So I have to really move fast as soon as I, and do small sections. And still, it doesn't necessarily do great blending, but I'm okay. I'm okay with it being a little messy. I'm just going to start. Now I have to decide if I want those to be a purple band across my green thing or not. And I think it's big. Well, no, I think I will. And sometimes, and I'm going to kind of mix it up. Sometimes I'm going to use all 3 colors. Sometimes I'm going to use 2 colors. I don't want it to be, oops, I switched around. I don't want it to be like real uniform. I want to mix it up. So that's how I'm going to mix it up, is by mixing up which ones I use. Sometimes I'm just going to use the one color. Now this one across there, I don't really want to turn, maybe I'll make this one purple, like a dark purple band that goes through. And that's just one color, so I don't have to worry about it. This is a lighter color. And maybe this is the lighter color still. And I want to keep that darkest piece contrasted, so I'm just using the 2 lighter colors in this section. As you layer over the top, even with the lightest color, it's going to make it a deeper shade. So one layer is lighter than two layers and whatnot. So and I want it to have a little bit of a stained glassy effect. So that's why I'm, changing it up where I put what colors. And you'll notice that there's not a lot of sound coming from the nib. It's not squeaking. And I notice that just how different alcohol markers, like what they're made of and how they lay down the color, makes a big difference. And one of the things is you get those real squeaky markers, and these ones are just, they lay down like butter. I don't know a better word for it, but it really does lay down color nicely. And it feels different to use it compared to the Fluently ones. Just the nib is a little softer, I think. Maybe that makes a difference, but just feels nicer. But I think if you're interested in trying out alcohol markers, don't start off, you don't have to start off with the most expensive, ones. At the time I got them, I had, had money, had money, was married. I have a lot of art supplies from that time. But now that I'm on a budget, I have to be a little more frugal. And these are not, even then I bought these with discounts from Michael's. So, or whenever they had a coupon or something, I would buy a few and a few more. So there's ways to do it. It's really kind of a little stormy here today in Baja. Great day to be inside, not fighting New Year traffic. So colors. And I should have said, for any of those of you who need to leave early, didn't really say goodbye. Now, sometimes there's a color that just blends better than another color too. Even in the same type of marker. I find that certain ones just do better. So you'll run into that too. Where some pigments just tend to do better, tend to play nicer together than others. I don't know why that is. Maybe it has to do with what the pigment makeup is, or I'm not sure. But I have found that to be the case. I do, and I think if you're having trouble, if the paper doesn't blend as well, laying down the light one first, to kind of pre-wet it does help a little bit on that. So try that out before you give up on the paper, maybe. Like, I think this paper doesn't do well. I'm going to lay down this dark one first. I think this one does better if I lay down. Yeah, see, it doesn't blend as well. I can get it to move if I keep working it, but I think it does work better if I lay down a nice layer of the light color first.
I'm laying down the light color all over, then the dark color where I want it, and then the medium color to blend between the light and the dark. And then the light color to blend between the medium color and the light. Now I'm going to play some of the green from that side and then maybe on him a little bit. And then I think I'm going to work on do the face. next month, or I should say, well, I mean, sorry, next year and next month and all of the above. Next week, next year, and next month, I will be starting with creative visualization. And the last Friday of the month, I'm going to do a little tour of my creative stash for those of you interested. Be a good start for the new year. We'll be thinking about, maybe what we want to have more of in our lives for the new year. So start thinking about that over the next week if you're going to be joining us. And we'll talk about ways to manifest that for the new year. And a year ago, when I was doing creative visualization, for those of you who have been with me, I did a creative visualization about maybe moving to Mexico, a new place, and and now everything, all of that has been realized. So it starts with a thought, and we'll talk about how to go from there. But for those of you who have followed me through my adventures, you know that it can work. So think about what you want, maybe what areas of your life you might want tune-ups for the new year. And then we'll see if we can tune you up. Well, if you can tune you up, I'll just try to give you some ideas of how to go about it. So. We can do it together. And then next year, you can see, I'll be curious to see if any of you that were here with me, have seen some results from those exercises from last year. Now, I really want these to look spherical. So I'm trying to give them the shadow side, and I'm also trying to make them a little lighter in the center. And I want them to even maybe imply that they're, shiny. So this is where, if I can find it in my pile, I might use the blender pen and try to create some highlights. Maybe move some of that pigment out of the center. Or I could even create, maybe I want to highlight on one side more. So this is where I might lift some pigment. Get it a little maybe brighter than what I achieved with how I colored it. So I was just brightening up that center area. Maybe I want to play around with that. A little bit. Okay. So I did basically one edge, and now I'm going to work on my little critter guy. And I definitely want him someone else in class made The end part of the ear is a little unlike the red side, and I like that idea. So maybe I might want to even find another brighter color to just change a little bit. My color markers, there we go. So I'm going to grab a I'm going to just grab a rose red and maybe incorporate that in on his little ear, the inner part of his ear. I want the outer part to be more dark color. We'll see. We'll see what happens. These colors aren't similar, so it's a little trickier for blending, but we're going to play around with that a little bit and see what happens. I'm using the lightest color from the first colors trio to do the blending between those two colors. Now, I don't have a ton of colors in my Copics either. I have a limited palette. So I try to work within what I have, but I try to, I would recommend if you're getting the alcohol markers to have like a warm and a cool of, each of the main colors, and we can cover, most of your bases. And, you can start, like I said, with just 2 colors of each instead of 3, if you're trying to limit your palette. But I do recommend having at least 2, just because, that is one of the things that's pretty magical about the alcohol markers is their blendability. So if you don't have things to blend, then you lose a lot of what it can, what's so great about it. And they do have a ton of color. Well, Copic does. There are lots of brands out there, and I haven't tried really anything but the Copic and this Fluency one, so I can't really speak on the quality of those, but there are a lot of options. And I think, when I got these, there wasn't quite as many choices out there. So there's a lot more affordable ones now than there were at the time that I, got these, which was probably like 10 years ago. At least 5 years ago. See, even just doing 2 colors gives you some dimension. Oh, I didn't do the dark part in there. Okay, there's a spot where I went outside the line. So I'm just going to see if I can, don't go into the inside of the color, just go just outside. I don't know if you guys can see that, but just outside where it is, and just saturate it so it pushes the color back where it's supposed to go, because it was right there, and now see how that's not there anymore. Magic. I might sneeze. Excuse me. Sorry. That was actually a mild one. I have my dad sneeze, so it's not pretty. Sorry, Dad. I've been, I don't know if it's allergies, but my sister had COVID. She's doing fine. She's all better now. And my niece had it too, because she's in the same house. And, they're all vaccinated and boosted and all that. And so they didn't get very sick, which was good. And one of the symptoms was feeling like you have to sneeze. It's like there's so many different things. I'm like, geez, that happens to me in certain seasons. So that's how I feel right now. But I'm not really going out anyway, so. Okay. So hopefully it's just allergies and it'll go away. Right, I'm gonna lighten up a little bit. On the top of that, just create a little highlight. So sorry about the sniffling. Can't be helped. Okay, Kleenex break. Okay. Oh, there's some pencil marks I didn't erase. So well. And I think I'm going to use the same interesting color scheme on side of these wings. And then I'm going to move on. If people are still with me, I'm going to stay until 10. So let's see. I'll work on the face. So please write in the chat. I'm thinking, well, I'm thinking for the face, I'm just gonna do the Prisma Premier colored pencils because that's a common one that people have. For these fingers, I actually, because I wanted them to be opaque, because I put them in after and I didn't think ahead. I actually do use I use the gel pen that's opaque. So if you plan ahead, you don't have the lines showing through, but I didn't. So I'm just going to use an opaque marker or gel pen on that. So I'll do that later, but FYI, I can still color them in. And we'll just add something. I could make them really dark too, so that the lines don't show up too much, but they still might, you still probably see them a little bit. So I'm just going to color them so I know where they are, and then I'll add the gel pen on top. I like that brighter color in there. So thank you, if whoever it was is here. Sorry, you don't remember. You can chime in. I just remembered somebody had done this back then and colored it and did a nice vibrant color for the inside of the ears. I think maybe here too. I don't remember for sure, but I just remember thinking, oh, I like that. So I play around with it. So change it up a little bit. All right. Oh, missed one of his. Oh, one of the feet are behind. Okay, I'm looking for his little feet. They're all there. One of them is behind. So it's okay. All good. All right. All right, I'm going to stop there. I think I've done enough to give you guys an idea of how to work with the alcohol markers. There's a lot of flexibility. You can get a lot of gradient of color with them, and they're a lot of fun to play with. I'll show you the original one again. I mean, I'm going to keep playing with layers and deepen up my colors and whatnot. So eventually I'll have the final piece that I'll share. I'll post it, picture of it.
Thank you so much for watching this tutorial on coloring with Copics. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share if you find this content helpful. Thank you so much and happy coloring.